Rebirth was tracked completely on real tape. What does that mean? Well, I have right here a Teac A3440 tape machine. This is an old school reel-to-reel tape machine. If you can think about the switch from tape to digital, what are the benefits of that and why would somebody choose to go back to this older version? Well, I really wanted Rebirth to have a unique vintage sound. There are a lot of downs that come with recording it on tape. You are literally putting it on a physical piece of tape, and depending on how good or how old your machine is, you can have varying results. It will not come out the same way every time when you track an album onto tape. Some of these downs that I can give you examples of, you add a lot of noise into your tracks, right? So you're gonna have that hissing sound that you get when you play old vinyls. At the same time, all of the work that you put into like frequencies and mixing and that kind of stuff, it gets a little bit distorted. You have what we call tape saturation, which sort of like glues and kind of runs the pieces of the track together.
My stringed emotion, my wooden bowl. My stringed emotion, my wooden bowl.
You have EQ fall off. There's a lot of high end and low end that completely cuts off with tape, and you lose the oomph and you lose some of the shiny highs, and some of this can be alleviated with different parts of the tape machine, which I'll cut to and go over. So this here is the Teac A3440 tape machine. As you can see, this is a reel-to-reel tape machine. You can see the two reels there, and I tracked everything on this album, including all my singles, using this cool machine. The ins and outs of tape, I'm not an entire expert on, but as you can see, I just got to the end of this reel. This is all the tape that's left. This is where the album has been finished, and I finished it a couple of nights ago, which I think is really cool. So I'll just show you some of the features. Basically, you have a little counter down here. This is what helps keep track of your tracks while you're on your reel. There's nothing digital about this, so you need to know if you go back using these forward and back buttons on the tape machine to go find a song that's written on this tape. You're gonna need to remember where it is, and as the tape runs, this is a little counter that tells you what part of the tape you're at, which I think is really cool. You have these sort of function buttons, and it all has to do with these 4 separate channels that we have. You can see these inputs here, inputs 1, 2, 3, and 4, and those correspond to these meters. These basically tell you how much saturation you're getting, how much audio level you're getting on these tracks. If it goes into the red, obviously it's like oversaturating the tape, and you know, some people like adding a little bit of that sound, but I typically tried to keep things right under the red or right at 0 as I was recording the levels. You have the ins and outs, you choose the kind of line that you want, and there are outputs on the back. So the process here was basically me plugging from a computer my tracks into these inputs, leveling them and making sure they were even, and then all the way from the back, if I can show it, you can see those outputs there. All the way from the back, basically plugging that back into my interface and recording the tracks onto Logic, which was what I was using, not for the mixing or recording process, but just for the tape process with this little MacBook. Let's see the rest of the features. You have a monitor input here, so you can listen to everything that's happening. You have your record, stop, play thing. There's multiple speeds on this one, which I think is nice. If I am, there it is. If I'm sure about that, it says low and high speed. I think that one is 15 IPS, which stands for inches per second. That's the high speed, and then the low speed is about 7.5 IPS. The differences, I think, are in the it's basically how fast the reel prints the audio to the tape. So the faster it is, the more tape you're gonna use up per second of song. But I think in general, the higher the frequency range of that tape is. There's some big debates about this stuff. Like I said, I'm not really an expert on it, but from what I understand, I did this on the high speed. I did end up using more tape, but it allowed me to get nice fidelity tape recordings that didn't lose as much of the high end and still has, you know, a passable low end as well. So that's what you hear on the album, which I think is cool. It's got the power buttons. I threaded the tape through myself, and there's actually a second reel that I have sitting somewhere else. So I used basically 2 of these, and that was the whole record. Basically 2 full
ones of these, which ended up pretty perfect, I think. I don't know if there's anything else to say about it. The process itself was really interesting and took lots of time, because if there was anything wrong with the tape, you'd have to go back and re-record it. You have to go one at a time. By that I mean you would record everything to tape, then you would rewind the tape back, and then you would go down there to the output. You would reselect it for your computer, and then you would play the tape back while it's recording, and then you would, set up for the next song, and then you would do the same thing. So it was just back and forth, getting the actual recording onto the tape and then offloading the recording onto your computer. So all of that was really interesting to me. I did end up using basically the full mix on the tape, and that's the process. So I recorded everything digitally. I put the entire mix onto this tape machine, bounced it back to my computer, and from there, outside of a little touch-up, I basically sent it to be mastered. So that's what you hear on the album, and it's something I'm really proud of. This is a really cool thing, and I'm really grateful that I had this lent to me, and this was really useful. So just so you guys can see what I used and how that process sort of went. So I tracked them, I processed them on the tape, and then I put them back onto my computer, and it was there in the final stages that I was able to adjust some of these different things. I tried not to touch things like the noise, the tuning, the wobble, which are different elements that the tape can bring in and make it sound really authentic. I didn't want to get rid of that because, of course, that's why I put it on the tape, but I was able to adjust some things like the high end and the low end drop off to make this mix a little bit more for a modern audience while still maintaining like a tape sound and feel.
I know that we've heard it all before. I wonder why we feel this way. I know that we've heard it all before. I wonder why we feel this way.
So if you're wondering while you're listening to the tracks, wow, this sounds really up to date, but it has a lot of these tape features. That's why I did that. And to my ears, it came out really good. I'm really excited for the release of my album, Rebirth. It's one of my proudest achievements that I've ever had in my whole life. And I am really looking forward to creating more music using some of these methods. So let's go through the album track by track and explain some of my thought process on them.